The international airport buzzed with the usual chaos. Long lines of travelers dragging suitcases, announcements echoing overhead, and the shuffle of passports and boarding passes at every counter. Among the sea of people, Manny Pacquiao moved quietly with his wife and children. For him, this was supposed to be a simple journey, nothing more than another flight on his packed schedule. Dressed plainly in jeans, a polo shirt, and a cap, he blended easily with the crowd. As they approached the immigration counter, Manny carried himself with his usual calmness. He smiled politely at the officer behind the glass, slid his passport forward, and waited. But instead of the standard greeting, the officer's eyes narrowed. She looked at his passport, then at Manny, and her lips curled into a smirk. She muttered, loud enough for others in line to hear. "Are you sure this is your passport? You don't look like someone who belongs here." Manny tilted his head slightly, taken aback by the tone. His wife shifted uncomfortably beside him, and his children clutched their small backpacks tighter. Passengers waiting behind them glanced curiously, sensing tension in the air. Trying to remain respectful, Manny replied in his calm voice, "Yes, ma'am. That is my passport. I'm traveling with my family today." But the officer wasn't satisfied. She flipped through the pages of his passport aggressively, as though she was searching for something to use against him. Then, without lowering her voice, she scoffed, "You don't look like a senator. You don't look like a world traveler. Honestly, you look more like someone trying to sneak in." The words hung in the air like a slap. Manny's wife bit her lip, fighting the urge to respond. His children lowered their heads, clearly embarrassed by the public humiliation. Manny, however, remained composed. His calm eyes met the officer's, his posture unshaken. "I'm here legally. Please process my documents," he said evenly, refusing to let disrespect drag him into anger. The officer leaned back in her chair, arms crossed as though daring him to protest. A hush began to spread through the immigration hall. People pulled out their phones, sensing something was wrong, and what happened next would leave every witness stunned. No one could believe the insult she threw at Manny Pacquiao. The officer's smirk widened as she held Manny's passport between her fingers, tapping it against the counter as if she had all the time in the world. Behind him, the line of passengers was growing restless, but curiosity kept them silent. Everyone sensed that what was happening wasn't just a normal security check. It was something uglier. "Tell me," the officer said loudly, "how did someone like you even get this passport? Did you borrow it, fake it? People like you don't usually have the right to travel this freely." Her words sliced through the air like a blade. Manny's wife's eyes widened, her lips parting as if to object, but Manny gently touched her hand, a silent signal. "Stay calm." His children pressed closer to their mother, their faces a mix of fear and confusion. Manny stood a little straighter. His voice, steady as ever, carried no anger, only dignity. "Ma'am, I've traveled many times. Please check your system. You'll see everything is in order." But the officer wasn't interested in checking facts. She seemed intoxicated by her authority, enjoying the chance to belittle a man she assumed was powerless. "You don't tell me how to do my job," she snapped, slamming the passport down on the counter. "Answer me properly. Where exactly are you coming from? Why are you here? And don't give me vague answers, I don't trust you." By now, murmurs rippled through the hall. A middle-aged man in line whispered, "Why is she treating him like that? He's just traveling with his family." A young woman discreetly raised her phone and started recording. Others followed. Manny's wife leaned close, whispering in Tagalog, "Let it go, Manny, please don't make this worse." He gave her a calm look and nodded gently, but inside, a quiet storm was brewing. For Manny, this wasn't just about himself. He had lived through poverty, endured discrimination, and fought for respect in every corner of the world. This officer's insults were not only aimed at him, but at every traveler who had ever been treated as less than because of their skin color, their accent, or their background. The officer leaned forward, sneering now. "Look at you, simple clothes, broken English. Do you think people like you deserve to walk through this airport like everyone else?" Gasps echoed from the line. Someone muttered, "That's racist." Another voice said, "She can't talk to him like that." The tension was thick enough to choke on. And still, Manny didn't raise his voice. His children watched him, wide-eyed, learning from their father's restraint. He drew in a slow breath, grounding himself in the discipline that had carried him through countless fights in the boxing ring. "I deserve the same respect as anyone else here," Manny said softly but firmly. "You may not know me, and that's fine. But I ask you to treat me fairly." The officer laughed mockingly, shaking her head. "Respect? Don't make me laugh. People like you should know their place. You don't belong among these travelers. You should be grateful I'm even letting you stand here." That was the moment phones came out in full force. Passengers shifted to get a better view, recording every word. The hum of whispers turned into a low buzz, outrage simmering in the crowd. But Manny stood tall. He refused to trade insults. Instead, he folded his hands calmly on the counter, his eyes locked with hers. There was no fear, no retreat, only quiet strength. The officer, sensing her control slipping, raised her voice even louder. "Do you understand who's in charge here? I decide who enters and who doesn't, and if I don't like you, I can keep you out." A collective gasp spread through the hall. The abuse of power was undeniable now. This wasn't an immigration check anymore, it was humiliation, pure and simple. Manny glanced at his children, then back at the officer. "Authority is not a weapon," he said calmly. "It is a responsibility. Please don't misuse it." Those words, delivered in his steady baritone, seemed to pierce through the noise. Some passengers even clapped quietly, though they quickly stopped, unsure how far this would go. The officer's face darkened. "How dare you lecture me? You think you can stand there and tell me how to do my job? I should call security right now and have you detained." Her hand hovered over the phone on her desk, but the moment stretched, heavy with tension. The crowd was watching, cameras rolling, and the whispers grew louder. "That's Manny Pacquiao, isn't it? Wait, it really is him. The senator, the champion!" Recognition began to ripple through the hall, though the officer, blinded by arrogance, still hadn't realized who she was insulting. Manny, however, made no mention of his fame. To him, this was never about status. It was about something bigger: respect, equality, and dignity for every person walking through those airport doors. And what happened next would change everything. Have you ever seen someone abused by authority? Comment below where you're watching this from. The line at the immigration counter had nearly stopped moving. Travelers craned their necks to watch what was unfolding, their murmurs creating an uneasy chorus across the hall. Some were angry at the blatant disrespect, while others simply looked on in disbelief. The officer, now visibly agitated, seemed to grow bolder with every second. She leaned forward, lowering her voice just enough to make her words sound venomous. "Listen here. You think your polite little words impress me? They don't. You don't belong here, and if I decide to deny you entry, you won't step past this counter. Understand?" Manny's wife tightened her grip on his arm. "Manny, please," she whispered urgently. "Don't argue with her. Let's just ask for another officer or walk away before it gets worse." His children looked up at him, eyes wide with fear. They had never seen their father confronted this way. To them, he was the protector, the champion who could overcome any opponent. But here, in the middle of a bustling airport, he was being cornered not by fists but by prejudice. Manny turned his head slightly, offering his family a calm, reassuring smile. "It's okay," he said softly in Tagalog. "I won't let this harm us. Stay calm," but inside he knew he couldn't just walk away. If he bowed his head now, what message would that send? Not only to his children, but to every traveler watching. That authority could insult, humiliate, and abuse without consequence? No. His silence would become their silence, and that was something Manny could not accept. The officer slammed the passport shut and waved it mockingly in front of him. "Tell me, do you even understand English properly? Maybe you should go back where you came from before embarrassing yourself here. People like you are a problem in airports, always suspicious, always making trouble." The words stung, but not because they were true. They weren't. They stung because they echoed what millions of immigrants and travelers had heard at some point in their lives. They were the words of dismissal, of condescension, of power wielded like a weapon. By now, nearly a dozen passengers had their phones raised high, capturing every second. The officer, perhaps too wrapped up in her arrogance, didn't notice the cameras or didn't care. A man in the crowd muttered, "This is disgusting. He hasn't done anything." Another passenger shook her head, whispering, "How can she talk to him like that? With his family right there?" Manny inhaled slowly, gathering strength. His voice was still calm, but the firmness in it had grown sharper. "Officer, I've answered your questions. I've respected your position. But you are crossing a line. My family and I are travelers here. We deserve dignity just like everyone else in this hall." The officer's face reddened, her pride stung by his unwavering composure. She raised her voice, making sure the entire hall could hear. "You think you can tell me what to do? You're nobody here. This is my country, my border. You don't get to demand anything." Manny's wife placed her hands on his chest, whispering frantically, "Please, Manny, just stop. We'll find another way." His children tugged at his sleeves, their small voices trembling. "Papa, let's go home, please." He placed a hand on each of their shoulders, kneeling slightly so his eyes met theirs. "Don't be afraid," he said gently. "We stand tall even when people try to bring us down." His words, though meant for his children, carried across the hall, sinking into the hearts of those who heard. The officer pounded the counter with her fist. "Enough. If you don't cooperate, I will call security right now and have you detained." "Do you understand what that means? You and your family could be locked up. Do you want your children to see you dragged away in handcuffs?" Gasps shot through the crowd. This was no longer just rude behavior. It was a direct threat. Phones zoomed in closer. Passengers leaned forward and the entire hall seemed to hold its breath. Still, Manny refused to flinch. He had stood in arenas before thousands of screaming fans, faced opponents who towered over him, survived battles far greater than this, and yet this moment felt heavier, because it wasn't about victory or defeat. It was about principle. "Officer," he said, his tone firm but steady, "you may have authority, but you do not have the right to insult, threaten, or humiliate people. My children are watching. These people are watching. And what they see is not strength, it is abuse." The officer's jaw tightened. Her hand shook slightly, though her voice tried to mask it with false bravado. "You'll regret talking back to me," she hissed. "People like you always do." The words sent a chill through the hall. Manny's family held their breath. The crowd's whispers swelled louder and tension rose to a breaking point. Everyone knew something was about to give, and then it happened. From the back of the hall, a clear, excited voice rang out. "Wait, isn't that Manny Pacquiao?" Heads snapped toward the sound. Whispers turned into gasps of recognition. The crowd began buzzing louder. Phones pointed directly at him now, not just the officer. The truth was starting to spread, but Manny said nothing. He didn't smile, didn't reveal himself. He stood silently, letting the moment unfold. For him, this was never about who he was in the ring or in politics. This was about standing firm against injustice, with nothing but dignity as his shield, and the story was only just beginning. The buzz inside the immigration hall grew louder, like a ripple turning into a wave. At first it was just one man who had shouted Manny's name, but now more voices joined in. "Wait, that's Pacquiao, right?" "No way, it really is him." "Look closely and that's Manny Pacquiao, the boxing champion." People began shifting in line, stretching their necks for a better view. A group of young men near the back of the hall held their phones higher, zooming in to capture the scene. Their voices overlapped with growing excitement. "That's the senator from the Philippines. I can't believe this is happening right here." The officer's face darkened with confusion. She glanced around, hearing the murmurs but refusing to acknowledge them. Her pride wouldn't allow it. She tapped the passport sharply against the counter and sneered. "Don't listen to them. You're not who they say you are. You're just another traveler trying to act important." But the whispers were spreading too quickly to ignore. A woman in line gasped, covering her mouth. "Oh my God, that really is him. I saw his last fight on TV. He's world famous." The officer scoffed. "World famous him? Look at him, dressed like that? Standing in line like everyone else? Don't be ridiculous." Manny, who had remained calm through it all, gave a small shake of his head. He didn't speak up, didn't try to use his name or his fame to shield himself. Instead, he stood quietly, his hands resting gently on the counter. To him, the point wasn't to prove he was Manny Pacquiao. The point was to show that no one, famous or not, deserved to be treated the way this officer was treating him. Still, the recognition continued to spread like wildfire. A child tugged at his father's sleeve, pointing toward Manny. "Papa, that's the boxer. The one who knocked people out in the ring." The father nodded, his jaw clenched. "Yes, and now he's being treated like this. Unbelievable." Phones recorded from every angle. Some passengers were live streaming, their voices narrating the shocking scene. "Guys, I'm at the airport right now. You won't believe this. An immigration officer is insulting Manny Pacquiao. Yes, the Manny Pacquiao." The officer, hearing the chatter, grew angrier. Her pride, already bruised, now felt threatened. She slammed the passport onto the counter once more, the sound echoing across the hall. Enough of this nonsense. I don't care what these people think they see. Until I say otherwise, you're not moving past this counter. Do you hear me? Gasps erupted from the crowd. Some shouted back in protest. Why are you treating him like that? He's done nothing wrong. Stop abusing your authority. The officer glared at the passengers but quickly returned her attention to Manny, her voice dripping with hostility. And you, don't think these whispers will save you. Fame, money, or whatever you're pretending to have means nothing here. You're under my authority. Manny finally spoke, his voice calm but carrying a weight that silenced the growing crowd. Ma'am, with respect, this is not about me. I will not tell you who I am, because who I am doesn't matter. What matters is how you treat people when you believe no one is watching. The words struck like a thunderclap. Even those who hadn't recognized him felt their power. Phones stopped shaking as people steadied their hands, determined to capture every second. The officer, however, forced a laugh. What matters is that you follow my orders, and if you don't, you'll regret it. Behind Manny, his wife whispered, her voice trembling with both fear and frustration. Manny, please. Why won't you just tell her who you are? End this before it gets worse. He turned slightly, his eyes soft but resolute. Because, Jinky, this isn't about being Manny Pacquiao. This is about standing for something bigger. If I let her treat me this way, what will happen to the others who don't have a name, who can't defend themselves? His words carried beyond his family, straight into the ears of the watching crowd. Heads nodded. Murmurs of agreement grew stronger. That's right, someone said. He's standing up for all of us, another added. For the first time, doubt flickered in the officer's eyes. She shifted uncomfortably, realizing the hall was no longer on her side. Yet her pride chained her to defiance. Don't act like some hero. You're just another passenger here, and I decide if you pass or fail. Manny's response was measured, deliberate. He leaned slightly forward, his gaze unwavering. A true officer doesn't humiliate. A true officer doesn't abuse. Power is not for tearing people down. It is for protecting them. Remember that. The crowd erupted into applause. It wasn't loud, not yet, but it was steady, undeniable. The atmosphere had shifted completely. What began as whispers of recognition had grown into a wave of respect, not just for Manny's fame, but for his unshakable dignity. And though the officer still clung to her arrogance, her control was slipping fast. Every second she refused to back down was another second the cameras captured her misconduct. The clock was ticking. Her downfall was near. The immigration hall was no longer just a place of transit. It had become a theater of justice, with hundreds of passengers as the audience and one arrogant officer as the villain. The murmurs, the whispers, the scattered applause, all of it was building into something greater. The officer, red-faced and flustered, slammed Manny's passport against the counter once again. Her voice trembled, but she forced it louder to mask her fear. Enough of this circus. You think you're clever, don't you? Standing there trying to make me look bad in front of everyone. I won't let you humiliate me in my own workplace. But it was too late. She had already humiliated herself, and the crowd knew it. Manny, who had held his tongue for so long, finally straightened his shoulders and stepped closer to the counter. His calmness remained, but there was a new weight in his voice. A commanding authority that carried across the hall and silenced the chaos. Humiliation doesn't come from others, he began, his tone steady and clear. It comes from our own actions. And right now, it is not I who is humiliating you. It is you, humiliating yourself by abusing the power given to you. The words struck like lightning. Passengers gasped, nodding, clapping softly. Cameras zoomed in closer. The officer's face twitched with rage, but her hands shook slightly as she gripped the counter. Manny didn't stop. He took a small step forward, his gaze firm but not aggressive. His voice, though not loud, carried strength that filled every corner of the room. You see me and my family. You see my skin, my accent, my appearance. And you decide that I don't belong here. That I am less. That I should be spoken down to. But let me tell you this. Respect is not given because of appearance. Respect is not given because of wealth or titles. Respect is the right of every human being. The crowd erupted in applause this time, louder and bolder. Some shouted, "That's right." Others clapped their hands, ignoring the officer's glare. The officer snapped, her voice breaking with anger. "Shut up, stop trying to turn these people against me. You don't know what you're talking about. I have the authority here. Manny's expression remained calm, but his words cut deeper. Authority is not a license for cruelty. Authority is a responsibility, a sacred duty to serve and protect. And when you use it to insult, to demean, to discriminate, you are no longer serving the people. You are betraying the very oath you swore. The officer's mouth opened, but no words came out. Her pride screamed at her to respond, yet her voice betrayed her. The crowd, sensing the shift in power, began chanting softly, "Respect, respect, respect." Manny placed a hand on his chest and spoke with quiet conviction. I don't ask you to treat me differently. I don't need special treatment. All I ask is what every traveler deserves are fairness, dignity, respect. Because today it is me you insult, but tomorrow it could be someone with no voice, no fame, no power, and they deserve justice too. His words rippled through the crowd like waves crashing onto the shore. Some passengers raised their fists in solidarity. Others wiped tears from their eyes, overwhelmed by the humility and strength in his stand. The officer slammed her hand down, trying desperately to regain control. Enough of this nonsense. If you don't stop speaking, I'll... She faltered, realizing she had no real threat left that wouldn't further expose her abuse. Manny leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping low but firm, the kind of tone that carried authority without needing to shout. You can detain me. You can shout at me. You can insult me in front of my wife, my children, these strangers. But you cannot take away my dignity. And you cannot silence the truth, because everyone here has seen it with their own eyes. The crowd exploded in cheers and applause. The hall that once held whispers now thundered with support. Travelers clapped, whistled, and shouted words of encouragement. Stand strong. We're with you. Respect. The officer's face turned crimson. Her breathing quickened, her chest rising and falling with panic. She realized her grip on the situation was gone. No amount of shouting or threats could erase what had just been said, or the dozens of cameras capturing it all. For the first time, she looked small behind the counter, dwarfed by the quiet strength of the man standing before her. Manny didn't smile, didn't gloat. He simply lowered his voice once more and concluded, "One day, you will understand that true power is not measured by how many people you control, but by how many people you respect." The crowd roared with applause, their claps echoing against the airport walls. The officer, trembling now, looked around desperately, searching for backup, for someone to restore her authority. But no one came. All eyes were on her, and all eyes saw the truth. Her downfall was inevitable. The immigration hall buzzed like a hive, but this time the energy wasn't from frustration. It was from unity. Dozens of passengers had their cameras raised, recording every second. Others whispered to each other in shock, some still muttering, "I can't believe she's treating Manny Pacquiao like this." The officer, trembling but desperate, slammed the passport on the counter again. "Enough," she shouted, her voice cracking. "I don't care who you think you are. If I say you don't belong here, then you don't belong here." Her voice echoed, but instead of commanding authority, it drew boos and groans from the crowd. "Abuse of power," someone shouted. Another voice rang out, "Shame on you." The officer's eyes darted nervously to the growing crowd of spectators. She tried to raise her chin, but her voice betrayed her. "Security." "Where's security?" "Get this man out of here." Just then, a tall, uniformed senior officer stepped into the hall, alerted by the commotion. His sharp eyes scanned the room, noting the raised phones, the angry passengers, and the red-faced officer at the counter. He strode forward briskly, cutting through the crowd until he reached the desk. "What's going on here?" he demanded, his tone clipped and professional. The officer straightened instantly, her bravado momentarily restored by his presence. "Sir, this passenger is refusing to comply. He's being disruptive, disrespectful, and..." But before she could finish, voices erupted from the crowd. "That's not true. She's lying. We've been recording everything." Several passengers waved their phones in the air, offering evidence. One man even shouted, "Watch the video." She insulted him. She called him names. She threatened to detain him for nothing. The senior officer raised a hand, silencing the hall. His gaze shifted from the crowd to Manny, who stood quietly, hands folded in front of him. His calmness in the middle of chaos stood in stark contrast to the officer's wild gestures. "Sir," the senior officer said to Manny, "can you tell me what happened?" Before Manny could speak, the crowd erupted again. "He's Manny Pacquiao," a woman yelled. "The world champion." She was insulting him like he was a criminal. The senior officer blinked, recognition dawning in his eyes. He looked again at Manny, studying his face closely. His expression softened. "Wait, are you Senator Pacquiao?" Manny inclined his head slightly, his tone humble. "Yes, but please, sir, this isn't about who I am. It's about how your officer has treated me, and more importantly, how she might treat others who don't have a name, who can't defend themselves." Gasps rippled through the hall, followed by murmurs of admiration. The senior officer's jaw tightened. He turned sharply toward the immigration officer, whose face had gone pale. "Is this true?" he barked. The officer stammered, No, sir. He was acting suspicious. I was only doing my job." "Enough," the senior officer snapped. He gestured to two guards who had followed him in. "Escort her out, now." The hall erupted in applause as the officer's eyes widened in horror. "Wait, you can't do this." "I was just now," the senior officer repeated. The guard stepped forward, taking her firmly by the arms. She struggled, her voice shrill and panicked. "This isn't fair." "I didn't do anything wrong. He provoked me." But her protests were drowned out by the crowd's cheers. Passengers clapped, whistled, and even chanted, "Justice! Justice! Justice!" The officer was dragged away, her furious cries fading into the distance. The hall felt lighter, freer, as though a dark cloud had finally lifted. The senior officer turned back to Manny, his voice respectful. "Senator Pacquiao, I am deeply sorry for what just happened. This behavior is unacceptable and does not represent our department. I promise you she will face full investigation and consequences." Manny gave a small nod, his expression calm. "Thank you, sir. I do not want special treatment. All I ask is that no traveler, famous or not, is treated the way my family and I were treated today." His words drew another round of applause from the crowd. Many passengers were smiling now, some even tearing up, their phones still recording. It was clear this moment would not stay inside the walls of the airport. It would spread far beyond. The senior officer gestured toward another desk. "Please, Senator, let me personally process your documents. You and your family will be on your way in just a moment." Manny picked up his passport, glanced at his wife and children, and then looked around at the passengers who had supported him. He gave them a humble nod as if to say thank you. The crowd erupted once more, clapping and cheering as he and his family moved forward. But even as he walked away, Manny's thoughts weren't about relief or victory. They were about the lesson this moment carried. That dignity, respect, and justice were worth standing for, even when the easier choice was to stay silent. The hall slowly returned to normal, but the story was far from over. Dozens of phones had captured every word, every insult, every act of courage. Within hours, the world would be watching, and the officer who once sneered with arrogance would now face the very justice she had denied others. By the time Manny and his family boarded their flight, the incident was no longer just a personal ordeal. It had become a global story. Within hours, clips of the confrontation flooded social media platforms. Passengers had uploaded videos showing the officer's insults, Manny's calm responses, and the dramatic moment when she was escorted away in disgrace. One clip, barely 2 minutes long, was already crossing 1 million views by the time Manny's plane took off. The caption read, "Immigration officer insults Manny Pacquiao. Her reaction when the truth comes out will shock you." Another video, live-streamed by a traveler, showed Manny saying, "Respect is not given because of appearance. It is the right of every human being." That line spread like wildfire. People across the globe began sharing it, adding hashtags like Gear, Respect for All, and Justice in Airports. News outlets picked up the story quickly. Headlines blared across screens. Immigration officer humiliates world champion. Manny Pacquiao gets escorted out in shame. From ring to real life, Pacquiao fights racism with dignity. Respect is for everyone, Manny. Pacquiao's powerful words go viral. The videos sparked heated debates about racism, abuse of power, and the treatment of travelers worldwide. Comment sections overflowed with stories from people who had faced similar humiliation, but never had the power or fame to defend themselves. For them, Manny's stand wasn't just inspiring, it was healing. Watching him stay calm gave me hope, one commenter wrote. As an immigrant, I've faced the same insults. Seeing Pacquiao speak up felt like he was speaking for all of us, said another. Meanwhile, the officer who had started it all was suspended within hours, An internal investigation launched, fueled not only by passenger complaints but also by undeniable video evidence. Her arrogance had been her downfall, and now the same cameras she ignored were the proof of her misconduct. Back in the Philippines, Manny's phone buzzed nonstop. Messages from supporters, fellow politicians, athletes, and ordinary citizens poured in. His spokesperson confirmed that the senator wasn't pressing charges. He didn't want revenge. Instead, he wanted the incident to spark reform. Standing before reporters days later, Manny addressed the incident with the same humility he had shown in the airport. Cameras flashed, microphones crowded toward him, but his voice was calm and steady. "I don't stand here as a boxer or a senator," he said. "I stand here as a man, as a father, as a traveler, just like millions of others who pass through airports every day. What happened to me is small compared to what happens to those who don't have cameras watching, who don't have fame to protect them. This is not about one officer. It is about ensuring dignity and respect for all." The press conference ended with applause, not the usual kind given to politicians, but the kind reserved for leaders who speak from the heart. Across the world, Pacquiao's message resonated. Immigration departments in several countries issued statements reminding officers about anti-discrimination policies. Advocates for human rights cited the incident as proof of why reforms were urgently needed. And ordinary people continued to share his words. Social media feeds were filled with clips of him saying, "Authority is not a weapon. It is a responsibility." That line in particular was repeated everywhere, in captions, in quotes, even painted on protest signs at rallies. For Manny's children, the lesson was even more personal. In the quiet of their home, his son asked, "Papa, weren't you scared?" Manny smiled gently and placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "Of course. But courage isn't the absence of fear. It is choosing to stand even when it's easier to sit down. Always remember, respect must be defended for yourself and for others." The viral story eventually became more than just a trending topic. It was cited in schools, churches, and community centers as an example of dignity in the face of discrimination. It was retold in classrooms where teachers asked, "What would you have done in his place?" It was shared at dinner tables where families discussed the importance of treating every human being with fairness. As for the officer, her name quickly disappeared from the headlines. What remained wasn't her arrogance, but the lesson her downfall carried. That power without humility is weakness, and authority without justice is corruption. And Manny? He didn't dwell on the incident. To him, it was just another moment in a life filled with battles. This one fought not with fists, but with words and dignity. Yet the world had seen, and the world had remembered. He closed his message with the same humility that defined him. We all travel different paths, but respect is the passport we all must carry. If you believe no one should be judged by appearance, let's spread that message together. The call to action echoed online, where thousands typed the word respect in the comments, uniting in a digital chorus for justice. And so, what began as a humiliating moment in an airport became something greater, a reminder that even in the face of injustice, one person's courage can spark change far beyond the walls of a terminal.